Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Humanitarians of Africa series, where we have been sharing our African stories of amazing founders in Africa. Today, I have from Nigeria, Halima, who is here to share the story in a different perspective. So wait for this, guys. You're going to be hearing something quite different. Let me not spill what we have here today. So Halima, thank you so much for joining me on today's episode. It's amazing and an honor to have you here today.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you. Okay, so who is Halima? What does she do? And what else do you think we should know about you? Please introduce yourself to people listening to us today.
Hello, everybody. So my name is Halima Layeni, and I am a men's mental health advocate, as well as the founding director of the Life After Abuse Foundation, a dynamic nonprofit established with the vision to engage boys and men as allies of social and systematic change towards achieving gender equality and healthy masculinity. So what we basically do is we provide sensitization, counseling, and mentorship to boys and men, to battered boys and men across nations. Thank you.
Boys and men. So when I was telling you people that we're looking at it from a different perspective, every woman I have interviewed here is a gender advocate, yes, but for women. Today we have a men's advocate, and I can relate, I can totally understand why men, but I want you to tell us why. Why did you decide to go the opposite direction, as it may seem, and focus on men?
This is a very common question that many people ask me.
Yeah.
And my response is always, why not men?
Mm.
But I would tell you how our story began. We actually started with women and girls before we ended up focusing on men. So in April 2017, we uncovered 128 cases of child sexual abuse in an underprivileged community in Lagos State. And the plan, as clearly stated before we began the project, was to ensure that these girls gain access to free psychosocial support. And then with the support of the government, we started the process of rehabilitating these girls. And we'll take them from their house and we'll take them to a social support center that provides free medical, legal, and psychosocial support. But what we found out halfway through was that our efforts were counterproductive because some of these girls were going back to their homes, they were going back to their abusers. The cycle of abuse was still being repeated. So they go for counseling on Monday. By Monday night, they're already back in the arms of their abusers. And remember that these girls are from underprivileged communities. So it's not like they had many options. Most of the abusers were their benefactors. So they had no choice than to just succumb to the cycle of rape. And me personally, it was a very depressing moment for me because I could totally relate because I am a survivor of child sexual abuse, and it was beyond LAAF. It was kind of like personal for me. And then we decided that how can we create a more sustainable change beyond offering rehabilitation services to women and girls? How can we ensure that this cycle comes to an end, or maybe just reduce it to the bare minimum? And then we figured that, okay, why don't we educate boys on women's rights? So we come to realize that the reason why there's a high rate of sexual abuse, gender-based violence, is the mentality that boys and men have that women's bodies belong to them. And also the lack of implementation of laws and policies for perpetrators contributes to the idea that you can do anything and get away with it. Allow GBV to continue to thrive. So we decided, okay, let's begin to educate boys. And then we started to educate boys on consent, on women and girls' rights. We went to schools, we went to prisons, prisons for juvenile. Everywhere you can find boys. we launched a campaign online for men to take a pledge. You know, I support protection and equal rights for all women and girls. And, you know, I believe that I'll give more information about that as we continue the conversation. But that's pretty much how we ended up focusing on boys and men. And the journey has been truly humbling.
I don't know how exactly I can communicate how I feel right now, but I feel like you are on the right path, because really, when the boys are not, or the men are not educated or sensitized about some of these things, it's like trying to solve the problem in a silos. So we're just focusing on one angle, telling the girls to protect themselves, but the people who are like perpetrators of the crime do not know better. So why not focus on those group of people? And that's actually a right step. And I must commend you. You're doing a really, really great job so far. So talking about your experiences, you said it's been humbling. How has it been? How humbling has it been working with men as a woman in particular?
You know, I would say that it's been such a privilege to have access to the stories of men. I think access to anyone's stories is humbling, because it takes a lot for people to open up to you about their stories. So, you know, having the opportunity to be a voice for men who do not feel heard, who do not feel seen, men who continue to die in silence because they do not know where help is coming from, men who continue to suffer violence as well. I think that, you know, having access to that information of somebody's life, especially a man, you know, has been a life-changing opportunity for me, basically.
Having access to men is quite difficult, and it's like that because of the way society has put it. And I'm sure you can attest to that. Society has sort of made it feel like an emotional blackmail for men to be men in particular, and then they just cannot just share their feelings, their emotions, and all of that. So working with men and their mental health, because it's basically advocacy for mental health and, you know, educating men and all of that, what are the challenges or experiences you have had with some of these men? So are you like the one having to educate these people, or you have a team of men that are educating the men themselves? Because, you know, in Africa, we have that mentality of a man is above a woman. So how are you able to communicate with this group of people?
So first, I'd like to address one thing you said before I go on to the question, which is the fact that men do not feel comfortable sharing their story. So what I've come to realize is that any man would actually share a story if you provide a space that is non-judgmental.
Enabling environment.
Exactly, it's a space for men. So this was one thing that I got to realize in my work with boys and men, that anyone would actually open up. The reason why men and boys continue to lock up into their shell is because the space is mostly judgmental. Every time a man comes out to say he has been raped or he has been abused or is suffering domestic violence, we see it on the internet. This is not even something that people hide. They get judged, they get mocked, you know, especially from even their male counterparts. A man says he has been raped, their male counterparts say, you were supposed to enjoy it. A man says that he has suffered domestic violence. You see women that are supposed to be, you know, be on the side of women, saying that you are a man. Why would you not fight back? How can a woman be beating you? So one thing we come to realize, and one thing that we pride ourselves in at LAAF, is just the enablers of creating that safe space for to, you know, freely tell their stories, and for boys to freely tell their stories of abuse. Now back to the question of what the work,
how you're able to communicate with them, the men.
Oh, okay. So starting off, like I said, we actually started off with boys. And even at that, because I'm petite. So, you know, when we write to the government that we want to reach out to a particular local government, and we, you know, all the processes that we have to go through school. I mean, we get, I'm going to tell my personal story. I mean, we have a team,
Okay.
We have been privileged to grow our membership from 65 to over 480 members of professionals, professionals that are medical practitioners, psychologists, social workers. So we have been privileged. The campaign that we launched online actually allowed our membership to grow. So back to my story, when I go to school and I'm like, and then the teachers, especially the male teachers, are like, are you the one who did the voice? And I'm like, yes, I'm the one who did the voice. And I'm like, I mean, this is a boy's issue. Why would you? So I always have to answer those questions before I eventually, talk to the boys. But one thing I come to realize is that if your message is clear, there's really nobody that you cannot talk to. I've stood before policemen. We've reached out to policemen. So one thing I forgot to mention again is that our network grew from, just talking to boys when people began to see the things that we were doing. So we began to get invitations from public sectors, from private sectors, even from police stations. So I've even as a woman, I've stood before policemen, old men, to educate them on healthy masculinity, women's rights and girls' rights. And like I said, if your message is not offensive, if your message is not insulting, if your message is not condescending,
it's not judgmental.
Yes, if you are not judgmental, obviously you don't want to stand in front of adult men and start telling them that, why would you be so woman? No, there are better ways to present it. Someone would always say that there are all better ways to present a bad news, no matter how bad the news is. So like I said, so if your message is, if you're able to create that safe space, basically, anybody will listen to you. And one thing we got to realize when we began to talk to boys is they began to feel a sense of belonging. It has always been about girls. When we started, there was nobody working with boys. So every time we go to school, you would see that you can connect to how they are feeling, from how they are looking at you. Like when you go to our social media page, you can tell that they finally feel heard. They finally feel like they have a voice. They finally feel like somebody is standing up for them, for their rights. And, that has truly, truly been humbling.
The message that you're passing across and the way you're passing across that message is very, very key in having to communicate with people in general. So when you were talking, you mentioned social media. That brings me to my next question. How has technology impacted or contributed to the work that you do in general at LAAF?
So the world is now a global village, thanks to social media. I want to believe that you found me through social media after we met at an event. But before you made the decision to bring me to a platform, you must have gone through my work. And what connected us, it was social media. We cannot even overemphasize how helpful social media has been. So in 2020, we launched an online campaign. It was a pledge for boys and men, for men especially, because we had less boys, adolescent boys who did not really have friends at the time. So our target audience were mostly adult men. And then we had them take a pledge that says, I support protection and equal rights for all women and girls. And we had men, grown men, adult men, taking responsibility for the hurt and the pain that they have caused women. And they were coming out to own up to it and to hold other men accountable and to begin to unlearn the narrative that they have grown up with. And, that was just, I think that was just a healing process for the entire African nation, because the campaign went across nations. Like I said, our membership grew. It was amazing. I mean, we got lots of attention from the international community. And so it was, without social media, I don't think that we would have been able to achieve that. So we had men putting that on their social media. I mean, obviously there were so many controversial conversations about men saying that, the social cultural factors that affect men from actually taking responsibility for certain things. But it was, social media, we also got attention from renowned TVs, television stations, newspapers. Literally, I did not even know that people had carried our stories until I began to Google certain things. And, it was, social media has definitely helped to advance our cause.
Yeah, technology is very important in the age and time that we find ourselves, and it's up to non-profits to be able to align towards that direction. So let's talk about myth and limitations. So in the course of your work, what are some of those myths or limitations that you have come across when talking to these men? You're trying to educate them about the rights of women, about how to treat women better, because they play a very huge role. So what are those pushbacks that you have come across when communicating with these men that you think is sort of responsible for the issue of gender inequality and GBV and all of those things?
So Nigeria is a highly religious country and highly traditional country. Yeah. Africa at large, like extension Africa, but Nigeria, we know we are Nigerians, so we know that Nigeria is. So our message is very clear. Women and girls should be able to live a life that is free of fear and violence, regardless of their social status, right? Our message is very clear, and men have a responsibility to provide that safe space for women and girls. However, there are so many factors that contribute towards ensuring that doesn't happen. And one of them is the cultural factor. Another one is the religious factor. Another one is the social cultural factor, basically. So, for instance, we are preaching that women should not suffer domestic violence, men should not beat women, but we have a law in the North, for instance, that allows for men to actually beat their women on the basis of correction. We have a tradition, again, in the North. We're saying that every girl child deserves the right to go to school, shouldn't be given off to marriage at a very early age, at a very young age. But we have a law that doesn't protect, that doesn't protect girls, in the North. So you can, even as a man, even if, whenever we go out and we educate men and boys, some of them will still say, but my culture allows this. We are okay. So we're saying that when it comes to childcare, it is both genders have brought the child to life. Sure. So both genders have a responsibility to raise a child. But you will hear some men say, I'm a man, it's the woman's job. These are things that our culture continues to promote. Exactly. And we know that things are changing now, and we know that, the more we drive this conversation, the more we're able to effect change. But it doesn't change the fact that there are still some men that they are highly traditional. We even have some men that they are they have all the wealth, they have all the education, but they will still tell you that this is what my culture says, this is what my religion says, and so I cannot go against my religion, I cannot go against my culture. So these are some of the challenges that we continue to face. So again, this is like a clarion call to traditional rulers, to the government, to the judicial system, to effect laws and policies that continue to protect the rights of women and girls, so that women would begin to live a life free of fear and violence.
You're right. Culture, most especially, and religion plays a very large role. Like, I wrote my master's thesis on the rape culture in Nigeria, and when I was doing my research, I was shocked on some of the laws that I'm like, we are shouting for this thing, but the laws are guiding these things, and you are promoting it. So it's like there's a contradiction. And I'm hoping that with our good leaders that are coming into power, all of these things will definitely be changed with time. So let's talk about mental health. So you are an advocate for the mental health of men. What are the mental health systems that exist when it comes to the aspect of working with men and all of that? So there are systems that exist. I don't know, I'm not a mental health expert, but there are systems that exist that sort of limit the full capacity of men. So what are these systems? And some of us don't know, how can they be changed, or how can they be reduced or solved, whichever way it is?
So I would say that we have the issue of mental health from a general perspective.
Okay.
But I continue to advocate for men's mental health because of the silent culture among men. So yes, we can continue to advocate for mental health. There are so many mental health advocates out there right now, which is a beautiful thing. I think that we should continue to drive these progressive conversations because things are actually changing. Recently, the federal government enacted the mental health bill, which is a beautiful thing. However, if we do not separate men's mental health from general mental health, we would still come back to ground zero, especially for men, because there's a culture that continues to silence men who are especially battered men and boys. So, which is why I continue to advocate that yes, mental health is good. Let's raise awareness of mental health. Everybody's mental health matters. But for men have a totally different story to tell because you talked about structure. There's currently no structure for boys and men, and that's one thing that my nonprofit is advocating for now. There's currently no structure for boys and men. As we speak, there are so many NGOs that continue to provide support and help economically, psychologically, mentally, only for women and girls, which is a good thing. I promise you, it's a good thing. But the most sustainable way of ending the cycle of trauma and pain is to actually tackle it from the foundation, which is the perpetrators. The perpetrators are the ones that need the help. In 2022, America recorded over 600 mass shootings in America, all carried out by men. And for someone who has a travel experience, you would know that women and men have access to guns in America. So it's not just the female, it's not just the male gender. So that tells us something, because females also have access to support. But the issue is men do not have their feelings and emotions do not have a form of expression. When I'm sad, when I'm going through issues, I can call my friend up. I can go to a non-profit that provides mental health services. I can go anywhere. I can talk to my mom. I have that support system, but men do not. And what happens to hurt people? That's why people would always carry, we're not advocating for people to carry guns, but we're just saying that these are the issues that need to be paid attention to. Now let's begin to pay attention to men's mental health. You talked about structure. There's no structure. I worked as an intern during my NYC at the Ministry of Women Affairs, the Lagos State Ministry of Women Affairs, at the Domestic Violence Unit. And we had women, come in to report cases of domestic violence, and this is how the process is. So after you tell your story, we'll invite the husband to come and tell his fair share of the story. And then when we invite men, the men will be like, if I even knew that this is existing, I would have come before my wife. And we would always encourage the men, no, you would have come. And they will tell me, why would I come? This is Ministry of Women Affairs.
Why is there no Ministry of Men Affairs?
Ministry of Women Affairs. So, but that planted a seed in me, because you are saying this Ministry of Women Affairs. We're saying, okay, even some NGOs are coming out now to say that, okay, we now accept boys and men. They can come and get free social support services. But we know that these NGOs are associated with women and girls. So this still limits men a great deal. So basically, I think that we need to separate the general mental health from men's mental health, and we need to create a system in place that tends to the mental and psychological well-being of men and women.
I feel like I need to stand up and really clap for you right now, because you just shook some tables. We need to have Ministry of Men Affairs, because men are going through a lot. The pressure, like we would say in Nigeria, is getting worse and worse. The pressure is a lot, and there is no space to vent. Sometimes we just need to vent. We don't even need anything else. We just need to vent. And these systems need to really be created. These systems need to be created. So let's talk about the future. Where do you see LAAF in the next, let's say, 5 years? What are your hopes, aspirations for your organization in the nearest future?
In the most simplest terms, I hope that LAAF will be highly functional in the 196 countries that we have in the world. That is my hope for LAAF.
In the simplest terms, 192. So how many countries right now have you ticked off the list?
So we currently have LAAF is currently functional in 4 countries: Ivory Coast, Benin Republic, Nigeria, and Ghana. So we have volunteers basically who continue to go into the communities. You know, they do the grassroots work basically because they used to educate boys and men on men's mental health, on women's rights, emotional stability, and gender equality. And we are also functional in 8 states in Nigeria.
Wonderful, wonderful. So we're almost getting there. Little by little, we will tick off everything from the list, and we would say 192. Yeah, true. We're always getting there. So finally, before I let you go, can you educate us in 2 minutes? Give us like an empowerment speech for people who do not yet know about men's mental health and, you know, everything that has to do with we getting educated about the role of men in gender equality and stopping all the sexually committed crimes across board.
Okay, so I'll just say that we need to begin to show more empathy and compassion towards men, especially the violent ones. That's a hard pill to swallow, but especially the violent ones. We need to understand that men and boys also suffer abuse and trauma. But because of the silent culture, you don't see their stories flying around. So this is just a call to action to everyone, especially women. You know, I know what women can do. I know what we turn things around. And I really wanted to adopt this and continue to preach this message of men's mental health, because that's the only way we can actually eradicate gender-based violence, if we're able to offer support and help to the perpetrators.
Thank you. So are there any programs or special events that you need the support of people listening to us right now? It's your time to call for support.
Oh, absolutely. So LAAF has, we have a project currently running for establishing the very first men's social support center in Africa. Wonderful. So as we speak, there's no social support center for men. I mean, like I said, men specifically and boys. Women and girls have a support center where they can go to get help, you know, legal support, medical support, psychosocial support. Men do not have that. So LAAF is working towards establishing the very first center for boys and men, where men and boys can equally, you know, work in to get medical support, to get legal support for those who are, you know, fighting for child support, you know, just having that legal support for men who do not have a voice as well. So that's a project that we're currently working on, and we're calling for donations. If you can give generously, I mean, we need all the money that we can get, obviously, because this is a niche that we're trying to break through. So we would really appreciate donations from the public towards establishing the center. Thank you.
Okay, so people, you have heard it straight from the horse's mouth. If you want to become an advocate for men, you need to find LAAF online, find Halima and learn, please. Right now, you've converted me and I want to start advocacy for men, because really we need it. It has to be an inclusive thing that we do for all genders, male or female, whichever way it is. We have to come together to solve this. So please feel free to donate as usual. Check your screen, the description box, or the blog. You find how to contact or how to donate for those of you that like to do it anonymously. If you want to volunteer, we also need your skills. You can reach out. If you want to join the community, you can also reach out to Halima or reach out to the team at LAAF. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us on today's episode. Please share. There might be a men's advocate in your community. Don't be hoarding these videos, guys. Share as much as possible so that someone can support the work. So Halima, thank you so much for sharing your story with me today. I really had an educative session with you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Ella. An amazing job you are doing as well.
Thank you so
much.
Well done. Thank you. Okay, everyone. See you in the next episode. Ta-da!
Bye.